Today is a bad day. Norm Macdonald of SNL fame has passed away at age 61, and I have not found myself more saddened by just a celebrity death, maybe ever. Norm was just so good at bringing me joy. I'm so down that he is. It's just such a real day ruiner that you're not going to have any more Norm Macdonald, and I hope and pray that his family are able to find happiness in his memory and are able to find peace and comfort that he's in a better place and are able to recover after this tragedy, because it is a tragedy. He's only 61. Didn't probably felt as though he didn't want to burden anyone else with this battle and just took it by himself, and just speaks volumes about his character, and also speaks volumes about him as an entertainer, that everyone today is talking about as one joke that with cancer, if you die, cancer also dies, so it's not a loss, it's actually a draw, which is just incredible that even in death he's able to make people laugh and people are able to use these gags to joke about him, which is in its own way pretty twisted, but if you look at it in a broader context, that's probably how Norm would have wanted it, that people were joking about it. But I think there is room to talk about and just be in awe of him, and be sad that such a great comedic talent and my personal favorite of all time is now gone. And I wore my sports hat today. I came back to my room and found out he was gone. I was like, that is just so awful. That is so awful that he's not here anymore. And whatchamacallit, the one I've been thinking about, just like a whole plethora of Norm quotes, because it feels as though that so many people have said intelligent things about Norm and his brilliance, and have just made it so clear that he's good at what he's doing. And I think that that's just because that he's just so good at revealing that like it's over time, like his brilliance and just his thought process and just the thoughtfulness he puts into his acts have really come to light. And B, it's just that he's so not pompous, and not he's not making himself the butt of the joke. He never is so self-deprecating as to be annoying, but he's very humble about what he does, and it's just so easy to root for him and to talk about and to examine and praise him. And Carl Reiner, when he was on his show, said something I thought really profound when he was talking about, Norm, his best asset is a smile. And Norm's like, what? And that's another thing I'm going to miss about him. I'm going to miss his voice. And it was just so perfect that, so many comedians, you need them to be stoic and solemn, and you need them to not laugh at their own material in order for that said material to work. And with Norm, he was able to just laugh and along with the audience. He was able to have fun, not at their expense, but with his own expense and theirs. That he would tell jokes, and sometimes it would work, sometimes it wasn't, but he was always having fun, and that made for a fun time. And the beauty of Norm is not that he was going for these huge belly laughs, even though he constantly got those, is that he was just generally inducing happiness. And Carl Reiner said that that's more of a trait, that's more of a feat of comedy than anything else. And I couldn't agree more, just to make people delighted by your comedy. Not for them to find it hysterical, but for them to find it just joyful, which I thought is just the perfect summation of Norm and his career. But there's so many other things to say, because in talking in that way, in being able to smile and stuff, he was just such an idiosyncratic character. He was such his cadences, his rhythm, like the way he said stuff, he had such a keen understanding of what made him funny and how his material would have failed if someone else did it. And he just had the most meticulously structured 6-minute jokes that would go on and have like 7 different sub jokes and have this great punchline at the end. And you would see other comedians and they just wouldn't be able to do it, because they would there's this expectation of punchline after punchline after punchline, and comedians wouldn't have the patience to frustrate the audience in such a way and challenge them in such a way. But he had the gall to do that. I think it, absolutely paid off. There was this narrative that thankfully has been corrected because there have been so many great video essays on Norm and so many great, commentaries on him. But there was the common read of him was that he was a meta-comic, that he was just there to subvert, the ideas of comedy and purposely tell unfunny stuff, that he had in some way this apathy towards comedy and having jokes land. But you see these jokes and like him putting thought into making these the quote unquote stupidest puns work, and it's clear that that's not the case, that he was always, as people would say, the smartest person in the room acting the dumbest. And you can see that in all his stories where, David Spade would text him and Norm would be like, hey, buddy, and, not text him back for a week and then text him at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like he upheld his own persona, his own constructed mask in front of everyone he met and everyone he was friends with just to get a rise out of them, just to, make him even more funny. And that's why he is the comedian's comedian, which is another term, like the fact that all these comedians, that he was so forthright with his views and so many of his views aren't accepted by them, but the entirety of comedy today said, what a loss it was, I think is just, it really just goes to show you that he was a master of his craft, and that I, like many others, are not going to be able to even appreciate the levels of his manipulation of the audience and just how well he was able to work a crowd. But from what I can gain from it, just the way that he enjoyed the challenge of, breaking himself down and having the crowd doubt, his ability to make them laugh, and then able to completely win them over by the end, is once again an incredible achievement on his behalf. And he would just constantly have these mix of jeers and cheers at the same time and have this ebb and flow to his comedy. He had such incredible gall, not only in just talking about O.J. Simpson when the entirety of NBC wanted him to stop talking, and SNL was threatening to fire him, which they eventually did, and going into the Lion's Den on The View or The Talk and talking about how President Clinton was a murderer. It wasn't even just about those, broad political strokes. It was also more about just more simplistically doing stuff that it may not be funny, that it may just completely fail, but saying it anyway, just at the chance of it landing. And you see this on Conan constantly. I mean, the dynamic he had, specifically on Late Night with Letterman and Conan, is incredible, that he would be able to, make them laugh at the absurdity that no one else would be able to make this content work, that they'd all be so afraid of it, and yet Norm captures it with such gusto and is able to make it work so well. And he would have segments in the 90s where you would watch on more niche shows and people would be dying out there. They would be so uncompelling and look so fake, and Norm would just completely save the act. He would just jump in and make something hilarious, and he would go to there was the recent red carpet thing. It was the stars are out tonight at this totally obscure little event, and he would just make it this comedy classic. Every single thing he did was felt like a 5-star act in its own right, and that's so impossible to do. It's just not something that I have seen in other comedians. Even what I would consider, my runner-up of comedy, Dave Chappelle, even him, I just don't see the consistency that is with Norm, that even out of a tweet or a little blurb that he would say, it would brighten your day in such a magical way. And that I must say that, despite the sadness I feel, and I saw it today on Twitter, there hasn't been this much sadness over celebrity death, I feel, since Kobe, and that it felt like losing a friend today. And it was this mix of shock, but also that Norm was able to provide for this comedy and relief that so few others could. And yet he didn't feel like this a celebrity that was completely detached. He still felt like a real person, despite being just the weirdest person to navigate comedy and to look, to be so different from what we would deem normal, and yet still being someone that we could relate to. And besides that sadness, I just find myself in real awe tonight and wonder over what he did, and that from his puns and his elaborate stories and retellings of stuff with Archie Bunker and his SNL work and his work on Late Night. He did so many different types of comedy, and I thought he was the best at all of them. I just love so dearly what he did. And I mean, you can tell by the sports hat that I wear so often that I have such a specific appreciation for how he runs the gamut of being dry and then being dad jokes and doing stuff that's crude and doing stuff that's, going against, what we would deem as correct. I just think that he was a pioneer that no one else we would call people, going against the norm of comedy. I felt like he was stretching the boundaries as they were closing in on it, and he didn't care because he just valued comedy so much and making people laugh and making them happy. And he certainly made me happy, and I'd like, wherever Norm is, to say thank you to him. I wouldn't say that he, came to me in dire times, but just like the general happiness he's given to me over the past couple of years has been astronomical, and the amount of jokes I've stolen from him, and the amount of times that I've just used stuff like him or to use that same cadence in order to make others laugh. His effects and reach are not something that can easily be measured, and I hope that he can rest in peace now. And he had a challenging life filled with gambling addictions, and I hope that he is at peace and can look down on his body of work and be proud of what he did, and he should be. And I hope that this, beyond just having people go back and look at his work, that it will show new people, what he did, and that they can go down the Norm rabbit hole and find a comedian that they love as well. So rest in peace, Norm. Love you very dearly. Very important. I just hope you're doing all right there. Hope you're not with Hitler, because not a fan of him, considering all the things you've said about him. So I hope you're in better arms. That's what I got.